I got to talk to Tony Levin. Tony Levin, legendary bass player for countless bands and musicians and so many incredible projects. Tony Levin is a guy I've been wanting to speak to for a long, long time, and it finally happened. So, got a chance to sit down and talk to Tony Levin. We'll be playing the interview throughout the show, and a lot of his music and stuff he's played. Here's the thing. Every single song that you hear on this episode, Tony Levin is on. That's right. Every song on episode 24, Tony Levin is playing on. All right. So, and that's a lot of different stuff. So there's still going to be a variety of music, a lot of different bands, some vocals, some instrumental, all kinds of great stuff. But every single one, this is the big Tony Levin extravaganza. Okay. It was very cool. I tell you what, to do the interview, he's on the East Coast and I'm in California, and he wanted to do a Saturday interview at 10 a.m. Well, 10 a.m. on the East Coast is 7 a.m. here, which is fine with me because, as you may know, I do a morning show at a radio station here in Modesto, so I'm used to getting up early. I usually get up around 4:30, right? I start hitting the snooze bar right around 4 o'clock. So getting up at 6 o'clock to be ready for a 7 o'clock interview was no big deal. The problem was my son is staying with us here at the house at Roman's World headquarters and check cashing, and his room is my office. So yeah, on a Saturday morning after he worked a closing shift, I had to come in on a Saturday morning and roust him out and say, "Sorry, man, I need the computer. There's the couch. I'll wake you up when I'm done." So he stumbled on out there, and we did what we needed to do, and it was great. It was great. So we had a great conversation, and like I said, I'll be playing that for you a little bit later on. But let's get the music started. We just played Tony Levin's solo tune called Gut String Theory. That was the Stick Man album by Tony Levin, Gut String Theory. Great song. So I thought that'd be a great way to start things off. But we're going to keep things going now. This is the Liquid Tension Experiment. Of course, Tony Levin on bass with the song Universal Mind. Very nice, very nice. That was Steve Wilson from 2009's Insurgentes album. Significant Other, name of the song. Insurgentes, I guess would be the proper pronunciation. Significant Other, name of the tune. Before that, Dire Straits and One World. That's on the Brothers in Arms album. And we also heard from the Bruford Levin Upper Extremities project. It was called BLUE Nights. That was called Cobalt Canyons. And that was recorded live in Japan in 1998. It was released in 2000. But anyway, the band is called Bruford Levin Upper Extremities, and that was BLUE Nights. All right, check that out. Great album from beginning to end. And then, of course, we started things off with Peter Gabriel, Growing Up, from the Up album. All songs, of course, Tony Levin is on, as he is on every song that you'll be hearing on this episode. This is the Tony Levin special, and let's get to the interview, all right? Had an excellent conversation with Tony Levin on a Saturday morning, just this last Saturday. Got a chance to sit down. We had a Skype interview, so it was really cool. I got to see him the whole bit. I tell you, I've interviewed a lot of folks and some big-name guys, but I could not have been more excited about talking to Tony Levin. So let's get to it. We'll play part one now of my conversation with the one and only Tony Levin. Well, all right, Mr. Tony Levin, thanks for taking the time to sit with us.
My pleasure.
I've been listening to the new music quite a bit. We'll talk about some of the specifics there, but first, you know, I'm sure this is a question you've been asked a lot and going to continue to be asked for a while. So let's just kick it off. We'll get right to the new stuff. You and your brother put together a jazz album.
Yep. I was a kind of intensely classical. I liked classical when I was a kid, and as did my brother. But almost anybody who takes lessons, that's what they start you on anyway. But what happened is Pete's my older brother, and as will happen with any siblings, you listen to your older brother or sister's records before you can afford to buy them. So he played French horn, and he happened on this jazz French horn player named Julius Watkins, and he bought all his records. And so that's what all I could hear in my brother's records. But we both dug those those records a lot. And it just happens that the bass player named Oscar Pettiford on those records played cello also, and just was great. They were great music. And we both, after a few years, we moved on into classical, and I moved on into rock. But we remembered that. And just in recent years, when I started playing the cello, I'm primarily a bass player, completely a bass player. But I got a cello, and I just started thinking, well, boy, I could kind of do that music. I really loved it, and we could write new music, but in that style. I'll talk more about the style later. And Pete he doesn't play French horn anymore. He plays keyboards, and so we could have a kind of a combo, something like that. And the idea so appealed to us. And to me, it was amazing that we remembered all that music. I mean, it's been 50 years. It's been 50 years, and we remembered every piece and every solo. And to me, that's a testament to how really classic that music was. And I'm not saying at all that I can write music that good, but that's a good ambition. You know what I mean? You sit down and try and write something that's that lasting and that classic. And what the style is what was called cool. We didn't know it at the time. It was called cool jazz. The songs are very melodic and very simple for jazz, very simple. And the solos are way short. Later jazz solos became very long and really more about the musicians. And I have nothing against that. But this style, you play your best ideas and then you move over for the next guy. So the 2 or 3 solos, and the songs are only 3 minutes long, so including 2 solos. So it's a very succinct style of music that I really dig.
Right on. I mean, just listening to them, you can really feel the sense of the fun that you're having playing this music.
Well, cool. I'm glad. And of course, it's a lot of fun for me to finally be in a band with my brother. And if you can imagine that we've had parallel music careers for, like I said, 50 years. And we have done plenty of music together, like I played on some tracks of his, and he's played on many tracks of mine. We toured together. The only time we toured together was in Paul Simon's band. He was playing keyboards and I was playing bass. But we never really sat down and said, let's do an album until now. And it is great fun. We're good buddies in addition to being brothers. We live in the same area. When we're not either of us on the road, we gig together locally, and so we have played music like this before live.
All right, we'll be hearing more from our interview with Tony Levin. Now let's get back to the music. This is Levin, Torn White. The song is called Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, and Howe, and of course, Tony Levin on bass from the first ABWH album, that was Themes. Before that was Billy Sherwood's Prague Collective. That was a song called Laws of Nature. You had Jerry Goodman from Mahavishnu Orchestra playing violin, and Billy Sherwood playing drums on that one. Then, of course, Tony Levin. And then Levin, Torn, and White started things off with the song Cheese It, The Corpse. That's Tony Levin, David Torn, and Alan White from Yes. Great stuff there, and lots more great stuff to come. But right now, let's get back to our interview with Tony Levin. You know, I'm the youngest of 4, and my oldest brother, if I got caught grabbing his records, man, I was risking my life when I was doing that. So it seems like you guys have been close your whole life.
Yeah, but then you know what it's like. Before you could, when your allowance was 25 cents, I'm maybe a different generation, but it was pretty small. You had to listen to your older siblings' records. Right. You couldn't afford them, or we could afford singles, I think.
Yeah, it was cool growing up in my house. My oldest brother listening to I mean, now Hendrix and Skinner and Pink Floyd, and he's the one who introduced me to that. My older sister was all Earth, Wind, and Fire, Elton John, all that stuff.
I love
so between the two of them,
like I'm an earlier generation, but I love you got a good musical education. That stuff's all great, and to me, if it's different genres, I played a lot of different genres. Mm-hmm. If it's good music, I love it. You know what I mean? All kinds of music it can be great, and if it's not so great, if it's just for selling records music, then I don't love it, no matter what the genre is.
Yeah, I was going to say, when it comes to like progressive rock, most of the progressive rock fans that I know, it really just comes down to good music. If it's good music, yeah. And I think that when the Levin Brothers album comes out, I can already tell it's being widely received already, just from some of the video clips that have been released and stuff. People are digging it.
Yeah, well, that's nice. We love that. And nowadays, I think the release date is September 9th, but nowadays you do what's called pre-release, and you try and get some of your fans. I have quite a few Facebook fans, so you try and get them to help you out by pre-ordering it, which golly, the music business is complicated. If we have pre-orders, then we know how many records to print, and that saves us some money and all that stuff. But essentially, it's coming out in a few weeks, and it's going to be exciting. But it's exciting now just to have people beginning to hear it.
Yeah, I pre-ordered mine right away.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah, I did. I jumped
Typically, you work. Well, in this case, we worked. It wasn't work, but we spent years writing it, and I had a lot of practicing to do. That you don't just sit down, you don't just buy a cello and suddenly be able to play jazz solos. So I've been practicing on and off for 3-4 years and writing this material, and then you record it over the space of a month, and then there's this weird 6 month or longer delay before it can come out. The artwork has to be done, the plans have to be made. And in my case, then I'm off playing other music. I'm rehearsing with King Crimson and touring with Peter Gabriel and stuff like that. And then I'm like, wow, that record's coming out and we're going to tour next year with it. And so I can refocus my attention on it, which is really fun. It's kind of schizophrenic, but it's a fun thing of music nowadays. Really, almost nobody records an album and then boom, puts it out the next month. You just can't do that anymore.
We'll get back to our interview with Tony Levin in a little bit. Right now, I got a lot of great stuff coming up. Of course, we'll be playing some King Crimson. Can't have a Tony Levin special without King Crimson, so we'll be doing that. More Peter Gabriel, forthcoming Levin Brothers CD. There are clips available. There's a video going around. I'll make sure it's on our website on romansworld.us, and I'll put it on Facebook as well, where you can hear, little bits of all the songs. But I am going to play a complete tune here for you in a little bit, so we will be doing that. But right now, let's get back to part 3 of our interview with Tony Levin. So I was going to ask you. You mentioned a tour, so you will be touring this album.
Yeah, we haven't booked a tour. The issue with it's coming out September 9th, and I'm booked right through the end of the year with other stuff. Mm-hmm. And indeed, King Crimson just arrived here in Woodstock, my town, to rehearse for our tour that starts in a couple of weeks. And then I'll tour with my band Stickmen, and then I'll tour with Peter Gabriel in Europe. So I have a wonderful fall that's really booked up. And somewhere near the end of that, Pete and I will look at next year and book a tour. I'm not sure what kind. I would imagine jazz clubs. And I wish I could tell you what time and day we're going to get to California, but I don't know. And that will be in the hand of booking agents and stuff.
Right.
But we will certainly tour. We'll put together the band. The band is not just the two of us; it's 5 guys, and we'll probably do jazz clubs and probably in the middle of the year or by the middle of the year.
You've put together quite a team of musicians for this album. These guys. Why don't you talk a little bit about the guys you've brought on?
Well, thanks. Jeff Siegel, the drummer, is a wonderful drummer who lives local to us, and my brother Pete had played a lot with him, and so he's the one who brought him in. And bass players and drummers kind of have a relationship. They're like brothers in a way. So Jeff and I got along great, and it was wonderful playing with him. Eric Lawrence is a great sax player, again, whom Pete, who's out gigging in jazz all the time. Pete had worked a lot with Eric, and he's the perfect guy. The few songs that have Eric playing like a ballad melody, it's really important to have one of those guys whose sound is just great. You just love what I think of is the voice that's within him. He expresses it through the sax, so he's fantastic. David Spinoza, the guitar player, I've been I've done about, I don't know, probably, I'm guessing 100 albums with him. He was a studio player with me back in the 80s, and we're also in a jazz band called L'Image together that's been together since the 70s, but we do very little. We try about every 3 years, the leader pops up and says, hey, let's do a gig, and we'll do a week in New York or something like that. So we've been in a band together for many, many years, and he was a good choice for sax. And very important, my buddy Steve Gadd, whom I went to music school with, has become one of the most renowned drummers in the world. And I couldn't bring Steve in for the whole album because he doesn't have the time, but I felt it was important, especially in one piece called Basics, where I was trying to go back to the basics of it's a piece where the bass plays the lead and it's very cut down, sparse into the basics of jazz. And Steve was very instrumental in really mentoring me and showing me how to play jazz, because he was a great jazz player back when I was just a classical player. And I was lucky. He spent 4 years kind of bearing with me while I learned jazz. This is back in the 60s. So I called him and he said, oh, sure, come on, bring it on. I'll play it. So that was a fun, Basics is a fun track for me. And it was important to me, if I could, to have Steve on the record, just as a connecting thing. And this is a record, but it's also kind of a bucket list thing for me. And in the same way, we decided to make it vinyl. I've wanted to do that for the last few albums I did, but it's just hard to do. It's hard to find the resources and figure out who's going to buy it. And this time I just threw caution to the wind, and I said, well, this has got to be vinyl. It's just everything about it is hearkening back to the days when everything was vinyl, and I feel we had fun with the cover and the back. We made the back of the album and the CD is kind of a jazz critic's notes on explaining what the music is like to you, just the way they were back in the 50s. And we even kind of put some fake coffee stains on the back of that album and made a little sepia stuff. And we had good fun with it.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
There's looking at the photos and the artwork and everything. There's one of my favorite movies is this movie called The Commitments, an Alan Parker movie. I don't know if you remember.
I did see that.
Irish soul band, and there's one scene where they're starting their first gig, and the old trumpet player looks at the rest of the kids in the band and says, "You always play better in your suits." All these photos, you guys are all in suit and tie.
I forgot that line, but I implemented it. And the guys said, "What? Excuse me?" Because I said, "Let's wear black suits and black ties to this session," because that's what they did. It's amazingly. There was a time when all men in America got dressed up to go to work, even if work was making a jazz album. And I thought somehow it's going to inform our music a little bit. I'm not sure I was right about that, but if nothing else, the photos of us around the sessions wearing suits and ties are a hoot, if nothing else. But I thought it would actually help me get in the mood of it, and I'm not sure I was correct about that.
I think it looks great. Still more to come of our Tony Levin interview. We'll get back to that in just a little bit. But listen, we've been talking a lot about his brother. Of course, you've heard a lot of stories and things about Pete Levin, but maybe you haven't heard his music. You might be new to his music. So let's play some of his stuff. This is a great song. He's a fantastic keyboard player. So I'm very happy to add him to the show. This is Pete Levin. The song is from an album called Deacon Blues, came out in 2007. This is called Uptown.
How long do we need to push our sisters to the sea? How many broken promises until we get the message? Until we know our equal, we will never feel the free. It's a far, far cry, beating on the drum, far cry, screaming at the moon, far cry, beating on the drum, far cry, screaming at the moon, screaming on the drum, screaming at the moon.
That was from the CD Requiem for the Americas, Songs from the Lost World. I got that shortly after it came out in 1989 because, as you've just heard, John Anderson is on it on the song Far, Far Cry. It was put out by Jonathan Elias, by the way. But what I did not know until I started researching for this show was that Tony Levin played on that tune. I've been listening to that song forever. I had no idea Tony Levin was on that song. But sure enough, that was Tony Levin from the Requiem for the Americas CD. All right, Far, Far Cry, that was, of course, John Anderson singing on the Jonathan Elias project. Before that, Bruford and Levin, Upper Extremities. You also have David Torn on that and Chris Bodie. Song was called Etude Revised. And Feelin' Love, Paula Cole. That was from the City of Angels soundtrack. I know that's also on one of her solo albums, but I have that on the soundtrack. And then we started things off with Pete Levin. That is, of course, Tony's brother. Tony played on that one as well from the Deacon Blues CD. That was called Uptown. Great stuff. Listen, if maybe I mentioned before, maybe you hadn't heard of Pete Levin before you found out that they were doing an album together. But if you love jazz, if you love good music, listen to his stuff, start picking it up. It's fantastic, as you can tell. All right, now, let's go ahead and get back to the interview. We've got a little bit more of the interview to play. So this is it. This is our interview with Tony Levin. Any plans to do a follow-up to the...
It's way too early to think in those terms. We undoubtedly will do more. This is not a band that's going to break up. It's my brother. It's my brother and me. We've been playing together our whole lives, so we're going to...
have to be a pretty bad Thanksgiving for this band to break up.
Bad, it would be more than a band breaking up. No, we're going to continue to do. Well, at the very least, we will always do what we've always done. When we have nothing else going on, we'll play clubs locally because we love to do that. We love to make music the way all the musicians I know and I work with, the guys who are lucky enough to do this for a living. By my age, we appreciate how lucky we are, how blessed we are to be able to do this, and for me to have my brother just down the road a piece, and there's a lot. There's always call for benefits. Oh, I don't know about in your area, but there's got to be one every month. And yes, they say, hey, can you guys play it? And that's two people who we can just pick up and play it. If we get a drummer, that's okay. If not, that's fine. So we'll always do that, and we'll do more as we can, and we'll do another album when it's appropriate. I think one of the business things that I'm not too sharp about is deciding when the market needs another album, and I think it's probably at least a year after an album has come out. But I'll let smarter people advise me on that. But there will be other albums.
Right on. Well, looking at your website, you have a website. You're on Facebook, Twitter as well.
Yeah, my daughter set me up on Twitter, but somehow it automatically happens from, you know what I mean? I'm of an age where I really didn't know how to set it up and stuff like that. Right. I think my Facebook posts automatically go out on my Twitter. I don't even exactly know. Right. So yes, I have it, but no, I'm not on top of it. Facebook I got on top of. And I'm of the vintage where I still program and code my own web page, so I still can't break away from that. Although fewer and fewer people start out by going to the web page, but I like that kind of stuff. Yeah,
me too. Looking at your gig page, I mean, do you ever get a vacation? Well, you're always on the road.
This year, yes. This year, it all worked out. It was the perfect storm of touring for me. I haven't had a year like this in many years, if ever. And what it means to me as a freelance player, I do my own projects, but I'm also a freelance player. And sometimes you just don't, in any field, sometimes you don't get many calls. Sometimes you get two calls and they're great, but they overlap and you have to only do one of them. And then once in a while, it just happens that everything falls back to back. So this year, amazingly, a band called the Crimson Project, who I tour a lot with, booked our shows, and then my band Stickman booked shows, and Peter Gabriel called for the month I was free, and then another month that I was free, and then King Crimson decided to reform Robert Fripp, our leader, and we rehearsed in all of the empty spaces I had, and now we're about to tour for September and a little of October, and we'll be in Southern California we'll be in California, I think, at the end of September and the beginning of October. And that's fantastic. Actually, that's my first priority, except it was the last thing to come in. So it just worked out that, yes, I only have a number of weeks free this year. And that's hey, I'm enjoying it while I have it. Next year could be much quieter.
I got a chance to see the Back to Front tour in San Jose.
Yeah.
I went to that tour. I got to tell you, I really, as a fan, I thought it was very, very cool when I saw a photo you had taken of the crowd from the stage.
I love taking the crowd. I've been doing that for years. Actually, that's why I started my website, is I wanted to share with the audience the amazing way they look to us on stage, and the way I've been doing this a long time. Really, the audience has something to do with the performance. It's hard to put your finger on what, but every performance is different, and it's not just because we feel good or we don't feel good. And when you see a picture of a great audience, you see that, you understand that. So ever since about 1994, when the picture was only 220 pixels wide, it was a tiny little thing. Ever since then to now, when it's, I can put a 1400 pixel picture up there, and it's great. You can also, some people can find themselves in the audience, and I get a lot of feedback that they love that. So nowadays, when I pick up no matter who I'm with, I can be in the background of Peter Gabriel. I pick up the camera, and a certain number of people in the audience are waiting and waving because they want to see their picture. And that's kind of cool. It's kind of a subtext of the show. It has nothing to do with the show, but it's part of it.
I thought, too, looking at it, I'm like, how strange for an artist, for Peter Gabriel, looking out on this ocean of people, half of them wearing shirts of his face looking back at him.
Yeah. I haven't asked. It
must be surreal.
Yeah, it is surreal. I haven't asked him what he thinks about that, but I think he's such a great performer that he plugs into all the aspects of what's going on with the show. If it's a great audience, he plugs into that. If it's a quiet audience, he knows what to do to try and wake them up. And it's naturally gifted performers do that. And it's, for me, standing behind a guy like him, or like Paul Simon, who I've toured with so much, or I've been with a lot of great singers. It's really fun behind them that you kind of can feel their what they project. You can feel that, even though you don't know how to do it yourself. If I was in front, I just wouldn't have a clue how to do that. But, I love when Peter does that, and it's really special. And about the website, it's been there's the pictures, but also I kind of quickly hit on that by doing weblogs of what it's like. There was no such word as blog back then in the early 90s, showing describing what it's like backstage for us and traveling and stuff. I can share some stuff with the audience, and it to me it broke down a little bit that barrier that's between the audience and the band. There has to be some barrier, I guess, because you can't go out and greet everyone if there's 50,000 people there. But none of us loves that barrier, and I feel the web, one of the first things I figured out about the web is it can tear down that a little bit, make that wall a little lower, and put the fans of the music in touch with the people that they love to see on stage. So that's been a great use of the website for me.
All right, now we do have one more final part of our interview with Tony Levin to play in just a little bit, but I've got a little bit more music that I want to play for you first. Hey, you know, this whole time, my daughter's been... Hey, baby. Hi, you're home. Hey, what you got? Outstanding. That's the Liquid Trio experiment from the Spontaneous Combustion album. Came out in 2007. The song is called Holes. Now, for the Liquid Trio experiment, you have everyone from the Liquid Tension experiment except for John Petrucci, who had to leave the studio because his wife was in labor. So the remaining three guys kept playing and recorded as the Liquid Trio experiment. All right, so that was a song called Holes. Well, and that whole album is fantastic, called Spontaneous Combustion. Before that, the Liquid Tension experiment again, so it's all the same guys with John Petrucci with Another Dimension. That one, though, was from Prime Cuts, Tony Levin, came out in 2005. All right, now we're getting to the end here, and as promised, I have a complete song from the Levin Brothers CD that's going to be coming out here pretty soon. And I'm going to tell you where you can go to pre-order it if you're hearing this podcast pretty recently, or to buy it if you're listening to this podcast a little bit later on. Either way, it needs to be in your collection. So I'll give you all that information right towards the end of the show here. But right now, let's get to our final part of our interview with Tony Levin. Listen to the music. I think already one of my first, favorite tunes, or the one I kind of keep going back to or find myself humming in my head, is Jumpin' Jammies.
No.
Yeah.
That moves along, and for me it was one where I tried to play. I played the cello with the bow, which is not the easiest, and in unison with the sax, and it kind of, to me, it sounds like two saxes. I really dug that we got the sound of a classic jazz band, but hello, if you listen carefully, there's a cello playing song. Oh, and it's by far the most up-tempo. Most of the songs on the album are what would you call them? They're not slow. They're not. They're kind of gentle and nice, and I like that. And at some point, Pete and I said, well, hey, we need some up-tempos, and we wrote a few up-tempos, and the most extreme of those is Jumpin' Jammies. My title, it seemed like Pete looked at me with a raised eyebrow. He said, excuse me, Jumpin' Jammies? Yeah, let's go with it. And typical, I said, let's go with it unless we get a better title, and we never did. So
I love it.
It's kind of a side subject, but I have a habit of changing titles until the last minute. And so when we go out on tour with anything I've ever done, it'll be the case with this. And we start putting the charts in order and using the current names. A lot of us, me especially, don't remember what piece that is because it had 3 different titles in it. But Jumpin' Jammies is an example of one that only had one title all the way. By the way, we also did the one that will stay the same is Mate Kudasai, a ballad from King Crimson. I thought it would be kind of cool if I have a number of fans who are King Crimson fans and they happen on this music. I thought let's give them one song that they know, that they recognize.
Right.
And it's such a cool piece. Adrian Belew sang it in King Crimson. It's such a cool piece that it stands up to a jazz treatment, and that's a testament to what a good piece of music it is.
Well, I've been enjoying it quite a bit. The clips that I've gotten, there's a video that's kind of a montage of the music and stuff, and yeah, I've been digging it. And I've noticed too that it's there's many generations in my home.
Yeah.
From a 2.5-year-old to occasionally great grandparents and everybody in between. And everybody's really digging it because I've been playing it very, very loud, and everybody's really enjoying it.
Well, I love that. Thank you for that. You just keep playing it loud. That's wonderful. And hopefully people won't walk out of the room and say, "Turn that stuff off." Well, thank you. I didn't really aim at a specific audience. Pete and I, quite frankly, we aimed at pleasing ourselves. This is music, a style of music that we love. But like I said before, it was in the back of my mind that it was so classic to me that the hope is, I'll put it specifically, the hope is that one person hears it and it sticks in his mind something like the way that 50s music stuck in my mind. You know what I mean? Right. If somewhere through the person's adult life, he still can remember one of my pieces that I wrote way back in 2014, that's pretty darn special.
That is from the forthcoming Levin Brothers CD. Song was called Jumpin' Jammies. Outstanding. Man, I've had so much fun doing this show. I had a great time talking with Tony Levin. Thanks to Tony once again for taking the time to sit with us. And thanks to all of you for joining in. Man, I know you've been digging it. If you're a fan of this show, you're a fan of great music, and know you love Tony Levin. So this has been a lot of fun. So let's talk about how you get the CD. Here's the deal. The easiest thing to do would be to go to the website. My daughter got to make a quick appearance as well, but now it's bedtime for her and for me too. So we'll see you again next time here on Roman's World.
I'm pretty tired.